Potrero Hill's an interesting neighborhood because it was originally a working class neighborhood. The houses are small, they're uniform, they're not distinguished. And I think Bob is very drawn to that.
I've done probably about 4 paintings of that intersection. And I keep shooting it because I'm sort of fascinated by changes that happen, different light qualities. I've treated it essentially like a still life. I can position the edge of the building on the corner so that the division between the light side and the dark side is dead center in the frame. So I get a bit of street that way and a bit of street that way, bright sun, deep shadow.
Bob's process always starts with photographs. I mean, he goes out and he takes generally slides. If the light is particularly interesting, or he'll go out into the neighborhood and walk and take pictures. I think he sees something different in it each time he goes back. That's one of the things that Bob brings to these paintings. He's not just doing a painting to capture the look of a neighborhood and then tossing it aside. He's actually spending years looking.
Bechtle's best known for his paintings of cars, of houses, of streets, really the things that are that he's most familiar with.
He's returned over and over again to his family, his friends, and to the places where he grew up and where he has lived. Alameda, where he spent much of his childhood. Berkeley, where he lived as an adult. And then once he moved over to the city, this particular neighborhood, San Francisco, and the neighborhood around San Francisco State, where he taught for many years.
Bechtle's always been interested in what he describes as ordinary fare. He's not interested in the exotic.
In effect, I'm shuffling through the pages of my sketchbook. I mean, I think of the camera as, as a tool, sketchbook tool. Certain images will maybe attract my attention, and then I'll start playing with them, sort of seeing what kind of compositions might be found in them, and just hoping that something will jump out and say, paint me. I don't know exactly at what point I slipped into the trap of projecting the image on the canvas. It came about because of the problem of showing this car that was in the driveway, and it was in a sort of three-quarter view, and so the foreshortening is difficult. When I drew it out, it didn't have the right feel for that car. It was one of those things where anybody that knew the car would say, there's something not quite right about that. It had to be absolutely right. And so I said, well, I'll just put the old slide in the projector and project it on and correct all of those lines.
In the 1950s and early 1960s, when Bechtle was just getting his footing as a painter, the Bay Area figurative art scene was still absolutely the dominant mode of expression. Richard Diebenkorn and Nathan Oliveira and Elmer Bischoff were these sort of pillars of Bay Area art. Bay Area figurative artists, in many ways, worked a lot like the abstract expressionists. There's a very sort of juicy use of paint. It's a very animated style. As Bechtle tells it, he tried to be a Bay Area figurative artist, and he just wasn't a very good one.
I felt that while I was doing the more painterly kinds of things, I was always looking over my shoulder, thinking about, well, how would Nate do this? How would Dick do this? And the realist painting really was a way of dropping all of that away. It was sort of a way of saying, I'm not interested in style. This is a no-style way of painting. It just goes back to looking, and which is a sort of classic artist, painter's ploy, to sort of say, I just want to look, I want to observe and learn. And it worked.
I think Bob's very involved in the process of painting. He's paid a great deal of attention to the ways that other painters historically have dealt with the medium. In some ways, he's more interested in the medium. He's not trying to make an effect or a statement or tell a story or do any of those things in his painting.
One of the things that I think about a lot is how one deals with the edges, not the edges of the painting, I mean that's another issue, but the edges where one shape joins another. Each little patch of the painting is like a little abstract painting that you're trying to figure out. And it involves this very intense concentration about little decisions that are going on all the time. And my rather naive and romantic theory is that intensity is very psychological, and it gets embedded in the paint in a way that people looking at the painting, they don't know that it's there, but it affects how they read the painting. And it's one of the things that makes a painting have a kind of presence.
I think over time, technically, he's loosened up. They're actually much more painterly. He's moved away from the way that the camera sees, and I think there's much more of his own sort of perception in there.
It makes it more interesting to paint because in the stage just before it gets finalized, the painting really seems like it's covered with a bunch of spots. And then when I go back over the painting to sort of tighten it up, I'll cover that up to some degree, but I'll let some of it show through, and the degree to which it shows through is almost accidental. It gives a sort of flicker to the surface, which is how I see things, I guess. I like to say everybody sees things that way, but maybe it's just my eyes going bad or something.
One can look at Bob's paintings as abstract paintings. They have a subject, but they could just as well be abstractions because they are truly about the language of painting. Since our lives today are so filled with pictures, with mediated images, with photographs, I think more and more we tend to think of paintings as pictures. And of course they're not. They're paintings. And I think that's where Bob's focus has been. And I think he's brought an enormous set of insights into how paintings are made, how paintings are constructed, how paintings speak.